68 Republican congressmen decided to boycott Barack Obama's inauguration in 2009. It would be the issue, and it hasn't been that way in terms of the coverage of this.
And by the way, just some stats on those 68 Democrats that will not be attending. 16 of them are from California. House Democrats skipping the inauguration are from 26 different states. 66% of those not attending are from states that Clinton won.
It's interesting to watch this. You brought up the escalator moment because I think that's something that we can all remember. I remember where I was at that moment because Melania came down the escalator and looked fantastic. That's what struck me. I can say that as a woman. But 99.9% of people who watched that never thought we would see this day. One of the few is, I think, Melania herself, who said, oh no, she didn't want him to run because she thought he would win. And she knew how much it would change their lives. I saw that in an interview, which is interesting.
For some of us, this is still very surreal, watching a plane with the United States of America on it and Donald Trump sitting in it.
You'll notice the difference here. This is not Donald Trump's private plane anymore. Right. This is a military plane that has landed at Joint Base Andrews, Washington, D.C. one day, almost 24 hours to the minute before Donald J. Trump will be sworn in as our 45th president. This is an amazing shot that we've got right here. You are looking at this plane landing live with the president-elect. We'll watch for him to walk out of that plane, but what a moment in history, Megan.
Yeah, and his first dance is going to be to I Did It My Way by Frank Sinatra, and what a more fitting song I certainly couldn't come up with. Well, and you know what I will say, the real silver lining for me in all of this is the cleansing it's been for all the political strategists, especially in the Republican Party, and I could name a few, but I don't want to get in trouble on television, who really have no business running campaigns and working on campaigns anymore, just taking a bunch of money from vulnerable candidates and then blowing it and not being able to go anywhere. And those people, luckily, I doubt they will have a future or career in politics. And I like that it has been, like I said, cleansing is really the right word. A lot of people for a long time that I particularly thought were, quite frankly, hacks. And I'm glad that they're not going to be working on campaigns
and as you look
anymore.
At the countdown clock, Howie, less than 24 hours to go until the swearing in. Things that we know. Chief Justice John Roberts will be administering the oath tomorrow. As Mr. Trump will be resting his hand, as we now know, on two different Bibles. One he's had since childhood that his mother gave him, and the Lincoln Bible. But one thing we haven't talked about is that we know that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people there at the inauguration, but there will be many protests happening as well.
And it wouldn't be a Trump show if there weren't protesters and a march and all of that. I mean, Donald Trump, people forget, ran against the Republican establishment as much as he did running against the Democrats. He had never been in politics before. I mean, we now are starting to take this for granted, but it's remarkable what he pulled off. And yet, at the same time, there are people who are not just in the Democratic Party who are having trouble coming to grips with the fact that he is going to be the president for the next 4 years.
The door is open. We are all watching this together.
You okay, Julie?
The president-elect.
You gave me some hope because you mentioned My Way, and I'm thinking about the first couple lyrics, alas, the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. I'm not sure that's the message that Donald Trump wants to convey with his first dance, but the
stairs have pulled up, and we will be watching for Donald Trump to be walking off that plane any moment now. Melissa.
I think, one of the things that strikes me about this is that is refreshing about it is that it is so different, and it does signal such change in the sense that all the polls were wrong. Somebody won who shouldn't have. Someone got in who didn't have any experience. And for me, as somebody who's watched as the process has become so sealed in those who have been there before, and if you don't know people and you don't have a campaign apparatus up and running, you have no chance, and there's no point in voting because the polls tell you the day before who's going to win. All of that was debunked in this election. And as somebody who's on the younger side, that's refreshing because it makes you feel like you do have a voice. You should go vote. The polls that tell you the day before who's going to win aren't always right. The person who has the last name that's been in politics forever isn't always going to win. That there's a chance for change. You may not like how this turned out, but it was unpredictable. And that unpredictability is really refreshing for people who've watched politics for a long time and don't like knowing the ending before it even starts.
Speaking of those polls, President-elect Trump now attacking again rigged polls.
Let's keep our eye on here because the door's just open.
I'll
A very exciting moment indeed. A busy schedule for the president-elect will begin tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. There will be a private prayer service held at St. John's Episcopal Church. The president-elect and his family will attend that religious service, but he is gearing up for what is going to be a very exciting next 24 hours. Of course, he will be sworn in at noon tomorrow. This plane took off. This is a military plane carrying the president-elect and his family. Took off from LaGuardia Airport just a short time ago in the 11 o'clock Eastern Time hour. It is now landed in Washington at Joint Base Andrews, and we are watching for the president-elect to emerge any moment.
There's Barron, right?
Spokesman Sean Spicer indicating this morning that the president will give a philosophical speech.
So right away you saw Barron exit the plane. Donald Trump Jr. has exited the plane with some of his children. Of course, he's got 5 children. There's his wife as well. Eric Trump seems to be following directly behind with his wife Laura. And there appears to be Ivanka Trump with her youngest baby that she had just last year in 2016. Of course, Jared Kushner, her husband, following directly behind. There is Tiffany, Donald Trump's youngest of his 4 children. And more continue to emerge.
Is that Marion Barry Trump, his sister, who sits on, I believe, the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeals and is a federal judge and very well respected? I think that's who that is.
And of course, we are waiting for the president-elect, Donald J. Trump, to emerge himself. But what a moment, 12:16 p.m. Eastern Time, and he has arrived just ahead of the big day, Inauguration Day, taking place tomorrow.
You know, for all the buildup, as I watch the plane, United States of America, and he's about to come out, it really does sink in a way that it hasn't so far, that we're about to have a new president, unlike any president.
As I sit next to Julie Roginski, a staunch Democrat, did you ever see the day?
You know, it's not, well, for me, I did not have this reaction, I must admit, when George Bush became president. I certainly would not have had it, I believe, if John McCain had become president or Mitt Romney. This is something very different for me, not just because of my political affiliation, but I think because of the individual who's about to take office.
If you're just tuning in, we are waiting for the president-elect to emerge from that military plane. It has just landed in Washington ahead of tomorrow's inauguration. His family has already exited the plane. We have not yet seen the president-elect.
This is a pause for dramatic effect. Every showman knows how to do.
Is this Melania?
Ooh,
this is Melania.
New First Lady.
The soon-to-be First Lady, and there he is. President-elect Donald J. Trump has arrived in Washington. Just one day ahead of its inauguration, you are looking at the soon-to-be 45th president of the United States. I mean, who just said it?
I was 22 or 23 when Obama was elected, and it sounds naive, but I never thought it would end. I thought I would have to deal with Obama forever. And anyone other than Obama exiting that plane is a great morning for me right now.
And he is receiving the formal military salute as he lands and walks down the stairs and arrives in Washington alongside his wife, Melania. And such a busy schedule will get underway. The first festivities begin tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time.
A lot of people will be watching the tone of the inaugural speech. Sean Spicer saying it'll be a more philosophical speech rather than an agenda-driven speech, because Donald Trump has had such a contentious transition, and that's by design. He is somebody who won the nomination, won the election by fighting and by fighting back. And so a lot of Americans will be tuning in, of course, to see what he has to say to the nation at noon tomorrow.
Well, you know, and it was an amazing sight just over an hour ago when he left New York City. People were lining the streets in Midtown Manhattan just to see him drive off to LaGuardia Airport.
And New Yorkers don't usually do that for anybody.
No, it's true.
Some of us are happy to just have 57th Street back, you know.
It's true.
Yeah.
And he is now in the vehicle. And it begins. We've got the countdown clock, as you can see, and that is a countdown clock to his swearing in. That will take place at noon Eastern Time tomorrow. Donald J. Trump has arrived in Washington ahead of the inauguration tomorrow. Yeah. Julie, you're oddly silent.
I'm not silent. You know, I'm taking it in. I have to say, this is actually, it's not a joke or said for effect. This is, in some ways, this has made it much more real for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but again, not from a partisan perspective, but to see Donald Trump, who most of us had known in a very different capacity than as a senator or a congressman, an elected official, to emerge out of a plane that says United States of America on it, I think just made it that much more real visually, if a picture speaks 1,000 words or whatever other cliche it could
And all this while his transition process. Yeah. Some say it's going quite well. His camp says that, but there has been some scrutiny and obviously hearings taking place place on Capitol Hill today. Steve Mnuchin, the nominee he has chosen for Treasury Secretary. He's being grilled. But all of this as that process continues.
It does. And Democrats are fighting tooth and nail, probably setting the tone for what things are going to be like.